Christ, welcome to Tales from Wales, the pod that never fails to swear an allegiance to history and defend your right to have a few tins while you talk about it, to ensure the realm of having a laugh is always protected, and to always bed the fair maiden of Welshness like the shaggers we are. I'm Jack, and as usual, I'm joined by my beautiful co-host, Franco. How are you, mate?
Normally, I think we've died off during the intros a little bit, but my God, that was beautiful.
Not me, mate. Not me. I've actually been waiting for a time to get it back.
Yeah. I'm not bad, mate. How are you? Hang on, let's hear this. A familiar sound.
A little clink.
Oh, that wasn't very good, actually. It's only a little one, that is.
That's right. That's all right. We'll do it again when I got a new one. I've got about half of this left, so we'll reconvene. Oh, what did you say?
I said, you can't say that anymore. You said clink. It's just a little joke to start us off, all right?
Just a joke. It's fine.
Yeah, it's just a little joke. You can say these things. It's on your
What have I been up to? Well, I've actually told you everything because we've been yapping for a while, and then we decided we got to record this because it's too good, and then we've yapped to another episode.
Yeah, but we're doing a couple tonight, and we're having some alcohol, which always brings the energy quite up, I think, because I think some of the lunchtime ones are a bit like, I'm alive.
We're on the clock, or we're on the fucking way.
Yeah, but now we're on the cack, maybe. Big booze. I got my specs on if we need to.
To the cack.
Sorry, belching like a pig. What we could do, because we're recording these with video now, we could pop the video on the Patreon for people to see the video episodes on the Patreon, maybe.
Ooh, a little unlockable.
Yeah, so if you want to join the Patreon to see our beautiful big heads, head over to Patreon, Tales for Wales.
You'll be able to see when we go like, oh, and he did a bit of this, and especially when we're a little bit more drunk.
Our classic act downs.
Oh, do this.
We do our outstanding act downs. And you can see in my Welsh-themed room, Welsh flag, Welsh scarf.
Every week, another emblem.
Although, man, I've been in my house for been in the house now for 3 months, and we still got so many things not packed, properly packed. We got boxes all over the place still, just hidden away, so you don't really notice them.
Once you're in and you've got all the essentials, you're the rest of that can just fucking wait.
Yeah. Oh man,
I've done it.
It's because it was sunny today. It was fucking nicest day all year. Literally, it's been 3.5 months, and we finally had sunny over 16 degrees.
Beautiful.
And in the garden, I was smoking a chicken and. Tending to the garden. I thought I was just so fucking happy. I was just I generally felt like I was on drugs. I was I had music blasting. I was eating quite nice. I was I spatchcocked a chicken, seasoned it with herbs and stuff from the garden, and I ate the entire chicken to myself. I was some kind of desperate Dan.
I was going to say some fucking baron just fucking cooking something in his back garden.
Have the whole chicken, and it was absolutely delicious. But I was just so happy, and I knew we were gonna have a few drinks tonight, and we're doing a quite nice mix of.
It's always great, isn't it?
Yeah, Heineken 0.0s, then lager. It's a nice little tricks your brain. So you have twice as many beers, but half as many.
Do you know? I found out why, because I used to get annoyed if I was driving or something, meeting one of you boys to the pub, and I was getting on the non-alkies, for example.
Yeah.
I'd had a couple of pints, and then it's right, gotta go now, alky now. I was just getting annoyed that it cost me about the same as a normal pint.
Yeah,
and I looked at it because. It should be less. It should be at least half.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
It's the same process. What they do is, I didn't realise this. They make the beer and then they have to extract the alcohol out of it. Before a whole other level.
I cannot say how disinterested I am in how they make alcohol. But
fair
whatever
enough.
they've... So yes, we'll leave that conversation. But I would say whoever's making Heineken 0.0s, they're doing fucking a brilliant job, because it's the only non-alcoholic beer that does taste fucking banging. It's so refreshing. I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I?
It tastes the same.
I had a pint, and I was just feeling really happy. I thought, God, life's tough outside, but I have a beautiful wife. I love her. Great friendship, love the pod, love Wales. I'm going to cry in a minute. Bloody love Wales.
And you know what? I don't say enough, I don't. Yeah.
And I was swicking my pint, and I was oh, this is gorgeous. This is such a refresh. And then I realised halfway through, there's no alcohol in it. And I was like, oh, God, I'm so
Right.
bloody cultured
If
nowadays.
that-
I don't even need
If that doesn't
alcohol.
bag us, the Heineken fucking Pro, I don't know what will.
Yeah, fucking hell,
Come on.
Heineken. Barty, they haven't put their hands in their pockets, so fucking one of you better.
If it wasn't such a fucking delicious rum, I'd have gone off them. You know, because we've been begging on our knees, begging.
Funny that
promo,
Penderyn
obviously,
offered
for
us
them.
booze, and we're not asked about Penderyn.
I know
cause...
the little brat. You know what? I'm actually not more annoyed at them because they dangled the fucking carrot in front of us,
but
and we went
slag
chomp,
off
chomp, chomp,
Yeah.
and they went just out your fucking Nash's reach.
But they did say they
Not
went, "Oh,
happy with
guys,
that.
do you want some whiskey?" And we were like, "Oh, we're not to each other." We said, "Not really," but obviously,
let's give the listeners the full fucking goss, right? We said, we came a begging, all right. We came without fucking hat in hand. Of course we did. We were small time at the time.
No, I think we said
"Oh,
if you want to do any like promo together, let us
collabs
know.
and we'll do promos.
I don't
for
think that's
you and all that
begging.
sort of stuff.
We didn't go, all right, my liege. We didn't.
We were there
beg.
going, please help us out.
I think we said,
Penderyn didn't have to fucking give us a time of day. But anyway, they said, oh, look, the guy went, oh, sorry, guys, we're at the end of our fucking
Financial,
bullshit.
Yeah.
And then he said, but tell you what, we'll give you a couple of free bottles. How was that? And we were like, oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
What's the best way to go about it? Use our addresses.
Here you go, mate.
And he
Fuck
went,
off. He went, oh, you've been
Fucking
blocked.
Yeah. Just a fucking. We even sent a follow up. Is this still on, mate?
Bottles of whiskey.
Bottles of whiskey.
I'm sure you're pretty busy, but I think there's a whiskey with our
don't
names on it.
even like whiskey, but I would have taken them.
I would have taken it. Yeah. Unlike Purple Moose Brewery, who sent us a whole
Purple
crate
Moose,
of beer.
who
Each.
furnished us with a box of beer each.
Yeah.
Which was gorgeous.
Yeah,
and
it
we
was
did a very
actually banging.
boring review of it because everyone was, that's all right, actually.
That's actually all right, actually.
That's all right, actually. That's actually
For
all right.
something that's
actually.
not
That's not bad.
piss lager, that's actually quite all right.
That's all right. Yeah, I was basically copy and paste that for every beer they do. It's nice. It's good.
Yeah.
Go have some Purple Moose.
I'm still exploring Ogmore and Bridgend, and we went last night down to the
You're
beach.
sniffing out all the little.
Man,
old
I love it.
places,
I love being by the sea. I grew up, we were down in Leabarry, so we saw the sea an awful lot there. And like my mum and my cousins, every single Saturday and Sunday, we'd either go to Porthcawl or we'd go to Barry Island, and we'd go to, because there was so many in my family. My family's fucking massive.
Yeah.
We used to take over, like down
bunch
the
of
island.
Catholics, isn't you?
Yeah, a bunch of mad Catholics. There's fucking hundreds of us. But do you know down the island, they have like those ramps that go onto the beach. So you have and they've all got numbers written on them. We used to always take over number 7, which was the furthest end. And now the furthest end's been done up, so it's a bit nicer. But we used to just take over there. And in Aberystwyth, I was by the sea, and I loved, like, whenever I was going through a breakup or an argument or something, I'd go to the sea and look out at the vast Irish Ocean and go, oh, God, and be all dramatic.
I'd sit in the rain to hide my tears.
I would. I would listen to fucking Bon Iver and have, like...
I bet you did as well.
I did. I really
know
did,
you
man.
so
I was such a performative male.
I went down to the blood bank.
I love that song.
I can totally
Blood
imagine
Beach,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a great song.
It is a banger of a song. But yeah, then moving back to the bay, like I know the bay's like more of an estuary than a bay, like the Severn estuary, but I still love seeing it.
Yeah, you're a fraud, mate. That's an estuary.
But no, I like seeing the water, and we were going to move to Abergavenny, and that would be more inland.
Mate,
I'm
you're
kind
a
of
true Celt. You associate
fucking love it,
spirituality
man.
with the water.
I was thinking last night, we sat there, we were walking down Ogmore, we walked down the corner, and it's just such a stupid thing to say, but like I'm always like amazed the waves don't stop crashing. I'm like, surely they have a day off, but they're just constantly.
They just keep bloody coming, don't they?
And I was thinking, that's been going on for fucking ages. Like, like wave coming
As if there's someone there they sat going,
yeah.
Any day else gotta stop.
Wouldn't you
It's
be
gotta stop.
exhausted if you were like a fucking crab? It's going, whoa, like constantly getting dragged back in. I like the Rock. You'd be thinking, I get it, mate. You're fucking bashing me constantly for like a millennia.
Constantly bashing.
So I do find it
Mate,
like incredibly.
It's a literal force of nature.
Oh, do you know people are like,
that.
oh, it really makes you feel insignificant looking at the sea. Well, that's exactly why I agree. I don't know why I did that dumb voice because I kind of massively agree.
That's you just doing you.
Yeah, that's actually what I say to a lot of people. It's another thing I like to say to people is, well, that's the thing with American politics. Even their left-wing stuff is like the equivalent to our right-wing stuff because like the Democrats are quite right-wing compared
I
to...
have been guilty of that myself.
It's such a classic
can't believe that. If they're left, is our right, am I right?
Yeah. Well, if the Democrats were in Britain, they'd be considered a right-wing party. God,
yeah. You got to do it, though. You got to do it.
Yes.
Whenever you hear something good someone says, you've got to repeat that until the end of time.
Oh, I do love it when you hear a bit of a nugget and you go, yeah, I'm going to steal that and pretend that's my opinion.
Or the trick is, though, don't say that and don't, like, catch on that you're
never
going,
tell people.
Wow, that was really good. You just go,
I did think that myself, actually. Right, well, right, I'm the smartest
Next
bloke.
time we talk to, and I say that, and someone goes, oh, that's very good. That's very insightful. Yeah, thought it up myself, actually.
Yeah, I actually thought that myself. And if you tell anyone that, you have to spread it with credit and say, I told you that opinion.
Yeah, and also don't talk to anyone in work or whichever friendship group it's come from.
Yeah, do not relay this back to the person I stole it from. But mine's mostly podcasts, and you got to listen to, no one listens to as many podcasts as we do.
Well, exactly.
Actually, you don't listen to podcasts, do you?
No, I don't. I haven't listened to podcasts properly in ages.
Don't you just listen to like an anime podcast?
Oh, aren't you good? Aren't you good?
Do you know on the Patreon, the episode we just recorded, when you left to go get your axe, I said some pretty inflammatory things about you.
Oh, I can fucking imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I thought we'd stop recording.
No, when you went to go get your axe, and you said,
you dirty little bastard. I bet you did.
So I think I said it.
Hey, look, mate. Anime's on the rise, okay? It's not uncool anymore. When I'm watching it.
Yeah.
I'm not an anime loser, all right? I watch the cool ones.
Yeah. You do watch a bit of it, don't you? It is a Finland Saga. Is that anime? Because I watched
Finland
that.
Saga, mate. That's anime.
Is that anime?
You watch that, so you're in the group.
You watch that, actually, so you're a pedo.
So you're a pedo as well, actually. Yeah.
But they don't go like, hi! Actually, they do a bit of that sometimes.
They do this. This is what, and this is all the elements that make them very officially anime are the kind of the elements I hate about it. It's because this voice acting,
over exaggeration.
If they're struggling, they do this all the time. I'm gonna put this close to it. They go,
yeah. I don't like that.
I hate it.
Yeah, I hate that. It's just like you want to tell them to calm down a bit. They're such overacting.
Yeah, just tone it down a bit. That is textbook anime. Unfortunately, you got to turn the bad with the good.
Yeah. But you also love that when I got you on to, which I've never followed up on since, the Primeval. Is it called Primeval? The one
Primal.
Primal, yeah.
That's so good, man. The third season's just finished, and I think I'm 2 episodes behind, like the penultimate and the ultimate episode. Anyone who knows, if you're into this shit, that I wouldn't say that's anime, but it's this guy called Gendy Tarkovsky. He did any news like me. Yeah, it is a good name. Any nerds like me who are listening, he did the original Star Wars Clone Wars series, right? Which is fucking sick. So go watch Primal. It's brilliant. It's like barely any dialogue. It's like full on action. It's actually quite like the first season, especially, is very like peaceful. It does so many like slow like panning shots of like just nature.
That's the one I watched.
Like that,
I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really cool.
It's really good. It's basically about this caveman. He's like a Neanderthal, and he teams up with like a T-Rex. I'll leave it at that. You don't need to know more than that. It's cool as fuck. It's the equivalent of, when you're a kid, like smashing 2 different toys together and seeing who'd win.
Yeah. Well,
like who'd win between like a T-Rex and a wizard? Watch Primal, you'll find out. It's good.
Dork, absolute dork. Well, talking of some giants, some like T-Rex is kind of like a giant, isn't it? Would you say? Talking of tall things, today we're going to be talking about Sir David Mathew, or sometimes referred to as David Mathew, who was a. I got to say, Google it. His burial and effigy is amazing. He's on display at Llandaff Cathedral, right? I'll give you a sort of second to have
that's
a quick
down the road from me.
Yeah, so it's a Welsh, it's Cardiff lad. He's a big bastard, but look at his effigy is mad. It's like a alabaster effigy, and it's like
Oh Jesus! I'm just looking at it now.
yeah, big fella. It'll probably be the artwork for this episode actually. So you just have a look at the artwork on this episode, but don't read any more about it, right? Put your clicks away, and I'll come back to the story. I'm looking at the camera at you, Jack, and you're not looking directly at me, so I'm assuming you're doing something.
No, sorry, I'm looking at the picture. The pickies.
Yeah. Stop, right? I've got something to tell you.
Enough now.
But so yeah, it's cool, isn't it? It's like a cool, really well made effigy, and this is a guy from like the 1400s. So it's like that's a really old, 600-year-old that is. But he was massive, right? He stood at 6'8". So for medieval times, fucking
so
huge.
Big, then.
Yeah,
he's like what the mountain from Game of Thrones would be. That's like touching that level.
They think maybe that's a part of the inspiration for some of those characters.
Oh, really?
Because he becomes like a King's Guard. And so at the Battle of Towton or Taunton, not Taunton, Towton, so Towton, Ton, not 10. The Battle of Towton, because I don't want to say Taunton, which is that place like down in southwest of England, but the Battle of Taunton on Palm Sunday, 29th of March 1461. He was in this big battle, this one of the biggest battles ever actually, and he was thought to be about 60 years old when he did this. But when he was there, he saved the life of Edward IV and was rewarded by the grateful monarch with the honour of Grand Standard Bearer of England. So he held the flag for the English king. Sir David Mathew is one of the most fascinating figures because he sits right at the intersection of Welsh history and the great power struggles of medieval Britain. So, after this, we have Henry, the Tudor dynasty coming up. So it's like a real, and you got like the War of the Roses, which is like. In terms of English history, like the biggest turmoil they faced since the Normans invaded. So he's born around 1400 as David Mathew. He lived during one of the bloodiest periods in English and Welsh history. He lived through Owain Glyndwr's rebellion. And
I was just about to say, so he was growing up during that.
Yeah, and he would have been. Glyndwr's rebellion started in 1400, and it completely finished by 1415. But really, the height of it was like 1408, or 1406 or so 7. It kind of petered out by like 08, 09, 010. So he was also down where it was bloodiest, like South Wales and Glamorgan area was where Glyndwr's rebellion lasted the longest. It was
right on the border. So
But also, we got a whole episode. I've written the notes for that, and I can't wait. But it's going to be like a 3 to 4 parter. But yeah, he lived in one of the bloodiest periods in Welsh and English history. The main thing for him was the War of the Roses, which was like this brutal dynastic conflict fought for control of the English throne. Let me just move my notes over to this screen so I can see a bit better. And if you don't know what the War of the Roses was, it's pretty much like a big family feud. The two branches of the royal house of Plantagenet, which is, we know that family from, they were part of the Edward Longshanks and all those monarchies. The two royal branches of this royal house of the Plantagenet were fighting each other. On one side, you had the House of Lancaster, whose symbol was a red rose, and whose king was Henry VI, a deeply pious but really politically weak ruler who struggled to control his nobles. And then opposing them was the House of York, symbolised by a white rose, led by Richard, Duke of York, and later by his son Edward IV, who was his towering, charismatic warrior king, who was said to be around 6'4" himself, which was enormous for these sizes.
From back in the day.
Yeah, so David being 6'8" and Edward being 6'4" is genuinely insane.
Wasn't Longshanks the reason Edward I Longshanks was called Longshanks? Because he was like 6 foot. I think it was like 6 foot
6'1". Yeah, exactly.
And that was like notable for the day. So,
it's like, imagine calling me like Frank's Longshins because I'm it was
long
so,
Franks, mate. Come on, it was right there. Long Franks.
Yeah, but it was such like a it was to be this tall was insane. So you would have looked fucking mad on the I can see the pitch on the battlefield.
I mean, if we saw a 6'4" bloke, we'd be
he's like a big fella.
He's big. Yeah, but like imagine back then where everyone's like rounding out about what, like 5'10" or something like that.
Yeah. So, as mentioned, House of Lancaster with Henry VI, and then you got the House of York. He was Richard, and then his son Edward IV. So across England and Wales, powerful nobles were picking a side, and Sir David Mathew chose York. And a little bit about who he was. He was one of the most powerful men in Glamorgan, holding the title of Lord of Llandaff, and he's counted among the 10 great barons of Glamorgan. So we'll do a story.
I love that this is just down the road for me. I need to.
Mate, it's amazing.
Shit, I need to go down and see his grave.
Well, one of the castles they talk about is next to where I live now, Coity, like right next to here.
Oh.
And so we should do an episode on the 10 great barons of Glamorgan, because Glamorgan was one of the bloodiest places in Britain, because it had so much blood with the Normans and the Welsh and the martial lords and all this.
It's kind of like Glamorgan, like Powys up north is like similar, isn't it? It's like it runs a crop of the border, so there's so many skirmishes.
Yeah, and so he was a Welsh person, and he has lineage to Welsh rulers before this. But his family would have made an agreement with the Marshes to become Anglicised or Normanicized, so kind of becoming a part of the new Britain,
new regime.
So he was this powerful ruler or powerful lord, and that meant his land soldiers and serious. That meant he had land soldiers and serious political influence in medieval South Wales. But the mood in Wales during the War of the Roses was really complicated, because a lot of people still remember the rebellion under Glyndŵr, and memories of that uprising were still fresh. And also, I will talk about this in the Glyndŵr episode, but the Glyndŵr rebellion destroyed British finances for decades to come. So it destroyed Welsh finances, but also it cost the crown fucking loads. So they were really, and they were also at war with France. So they were like, the Marshall areas lost so much money during all this time. So many Welsh families had long-standing loyalties to powerful martial lords, while others were drawn to figures like Edward IV, who had a strong support from Welsh nobles. So a lot of the English supported the Lancasters, and then a lot of the more modern Welsh people supported House of York, because he was kind of like an attack on the... they also saw him like a very strong leader, but he was also kind of... They liked his
was the anti-establishment. Am I getting
kind
that
of
right?
yeah? One more like a political person. One was like a warrior. So the Welsh kind of led more to the warrior king.
It sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah. South Wales in particular, including Glamorgan, had strong Yorkist connections through influential families like the Herberts. But other regions hedged their bets back in whichever side they thought most likely to win. But for many Welsh soldiers, this wasn't really about roses or royal bloodlines. It was about loyalty to their local lord and the promised reward if their side triumphed. So a lot of like the normal soldiers didn't really care who was in charge of Britain. It was more like, well, let's follow my lord, who does, their lord protects their home and looks after them and pays their wages and stuff.
No one wants to lose and be working for someone you tried to kill. It's like that's not a good way to go.
And also Sir David Mathew's reputation had been forged on the battlefield. He'd been like renowned as this great warrior anyway. And then in 1461 he fought for the Yorkists and the legendary Battle of Taunton, widely considered the largest and bloodiest battle ever fought on English soil. Some historians believe there's around 50 to 60,000 men involved, which at the time was almost unimaginable figure.
Huge. Yeah.
Like Wales had around 150,000 people living in it. This is like a third of all of Wales going for a fight. And also, the conditions of this battle were horrific. The battle took place on Palm Sunday during a blizzard. So freezing winds blasted across the battlefield as these two massive armies faced each other in really deep snow. But the Yorkists used the weather to their advantage. Their archers fired first, and because the wind was blowing towards the Lancastrian army, their arrows travelled further. Nice. So when the Lancastrians fired back, their arrows fell short, landing harmlessly in the snow. Also, a lot of the Yorkist archers were Welsh archers, which we know were some of the best in the world.
Some of the best in the world, yeah.
Even though by this stage now the English had learned a lot of under Edward I.
They co-opted the longbow and the archer doctrine and all that,
the Yorkists just fucking battered them with arrows. So if you think at the start of every battle, your archers go first, you fire at each other. If one archer can fire 12 arrows and say 8 hit, you're looking at thousands of men taken out just before. Because the Lancastrians couldn't hit any of their targets, all the Yorkists then simply walked over, collected. So when the arrows missed the Yorkist archers could. What would normally happen? So I'll say it's clearer. your two archers would fire at each other until you ran out of arrows,
Yeah.
then you'd go to war. In this case, the Yorkists simply just walked over and collected the arrows that fell too short, and then so the Yorkists could just have fucking nearly, like, they had double the amount of arrows. Yeah.
That's absolute tanking your morale as well, isn't it, surely?
Well, that's the thing. Within like minutes, the Lancastrians were then being hammered by their own ammunition. Then the infantry lines clashed, which what followed was hours of brutal hand-to-hand combat, swords, axes, polearms, war hammers, like smashing into each other, all in the freezing mud. Like, ugh. Like medieval battles were already savage affairs, but Taunton became known as something like entirely different, just how brutal it was and how many people died.
Blood and snow, mate. Ugh.
Yeah. Contemporary accounts describe men slipping in blood-soaked snow, bodies piling up so thickly that soldiers sometimes had to climb over the dead just to keep fighting. You know, Battle of the Bastards?
Yeah.
You know the episode Battle of the Bastards?
Yeah, from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's kind of based on this. So,
right.
you've got... Because a lot of Game of Thrones is based on War of the Roses.
Any Game of Thrones fan? Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, there's a book, isn't there, about War of the Roses that, what's his name? Fucking George R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
That is like the inspiration for Game of Thrones, essentially.
Oh, and do you remember in Battle of the Bastards when they all pile up high and they have to, like, they're trying to get out, but they're stuck by the bodies?
Like,
yeah. The bodies hit the floor. So there's like contemporary story accounts of people having to climb over the dead, but then get shot down by arrows as they climb over them. There's a nearby stream, later called Bloody Meadow, where fleeing Lancastrian soldiers were cut down as they tried to escape. And there's archaeological evidence suggests many drowned under the weight of their armour whilst trying to cross the icy river.
Oh, dear.
Estimates suggest nearly 28,000 men died in a single day.
Bloody hell.
Somewhere in the chaos, Sir David Mathew supposedly performed the act that made his name legendary, though. So this is like his big thing. According to the stories, he saved the life of the Yorkist king Edward IV during the battle. It was either that he was shielding him during a melee and then pulled him from danger, or he was helping defend the royal standard. And when everyone else died, he was swinging his massive sword and cutting everyone down so the king could stand to his feet and get out of there. So he either pulled him away.
That version.
Yeah, he either pulled him away and got him to safety, or he fought there and chopped him in half. But the king was saved because of him, right? And this part, so no matter what, either him pulling him to safety or standing there and fighting, it doesn't matter, because Edward rewarded Mathew with one of the biggest prestigious military honours you can get in the United Kingdom, which is the Grand Standard Bearer of England. So that meant carrying the royal battle standard, and that symbol that told soldiers the king was still alive. So it's in films, you often see it like, if it falls, someone dies, someone rushes to pick it back up to show everyone else in the battlefield.
Yeah, you always do the
king is still alive.
The flag. Yeah.
And if you lose that banner in battle, it meant like massive panic and collapse. So if that standard bearer fell and the flag fell, people would go like, shit, it's over, get out of here. So it's a position only ever given to people the king completely trusted. So trusted that they were good enough to fight and trusted they wouldn't run away. He was also Mathew was also granted the rare privilege of adding Taunton to his heraldry, essentially immortalising his loyalty on his coat of arms. So he got to add that battle to his heraldry and add it to his coat of arms.
Okay.
But yes, so he then wasn't just a soldier. He also held the role of seneschal of Llandaff Cathedral, managing the estate and administration and being connected with the church. And in 1480, he funded the restoration of the shrine of St. Taylor, which had previously been...
Our boy St. Taylor. We like a bit of St. Taylor.
And if you remember, his shrine had been desecrated by pirates raiding the Bristol Channel. So it's mad to think medieval Wales has like pirates attacking cathedrals, but that is what happened. So yet despite surviving one of the bloodiest battles in British history, Sir David didn't die on the battlefield. Instead, his life was ended in a far more personal kind of medieval violence. And in 1484, he was killed in a feud at Neath, reportedly by members of the powerful Turberville family. So he was in an argument, and apparently we've heard of the Turberville family a few times.
I've heard Turbervilles,
yeah. So it's a reminder that even knights who survived chaos of civil war, local rivalries, and family feuds were still some of the most deadly. So you can still see his legacy today. His full-length alabaster effigy lies in the Llandaff Cathedral in Cardiff, a stone knight resting in his armour, over 6 feet long, representing a man who lived in one of the most violent chapters of medieval history. He was a Welsh baron, a Yorkist loyalist, and a man who may have been saved a king in the middle of the bloodiest snowstorm battle in British history. And one quite cool thing about Sir David was his family. What happened after he died, right? So he had three sons, and David, born 1425, married Anne Middleton, who had a son then called Jenkin Mathew. And David was then the founder of all the Matthews American line, which would eventually arrive in the New World with Thomas Matthews. And Thomas arrived in Halifax in 1700. So because of him, that's why people who were named Matthews in America with that surname come from this firstborn.
Oh, a knight of Glamorgan. I love it.
Yeah. And then his other son, Rayburn, was the founder of the Llandaff line of Matthews, having married Isabel Denise. And what did they do? Rayburn's will directed that he should be buried in the Chapel of the Virgin Mary at the Gaunt Chapel, Bristol, where the Poynts family later in 1520 built a family chapel. His will directed that gold and silver items be placed upon the shrine of his kinsman, St. Taylor, St. Eudicus, and St. Dubricius at Llandaff Cathedral. Rayburn's eldest son and his heir was Sir Christopher Mathew, whose effigy is one of the three surviving Mathew effigies at a cathedral at Llandaff. So all these people have these amazing effigies,
huge lineages. Yeah. Also, when you said Sir Ray, his son Ray-Ban, it's founded the glasses Ray-Bans.
Yeah. And then the third son, Thomas, he is mentioned in Rayburn's will, and he had been the custodian of the relics of St. Taylor. He married Catherine Ferch Morgan, daughter of Welsh nobleman Morgan ap Llywelyn, and founded the Radar line of Mathew. He's also buried at the Gaunt Chapel in Bristol. And on his death, his lands passed down to his son, who was knighted by Henry VII at the Battle of Bosworth. So this lineage of his sons, they fought at some of the biggest battles in British history. Sir Knight William's successor was the eldest son, Sir George Mathew, who became MP for the Glamorgan constituency, one of the very first MPs in 1545. And the Radar line was founded by, from the Radar line was founded the family of the Earls of Llandaff, without the double L, in the peerage of Ireland. So yeah, just some extra.
His kin of just fucking infiltrating.
I mean, it's pretty amazing that the Matthews American line started off with a Welshman down here in where we are now,
Glamorganshire boy. Yeah.
And I wanted to check how Welsh he was. In terms of was he just an English knight living in Wales? But that wasn't the case. So if the fact he's called David Mathew, it's almost that's an indication already. He's not a Norman or a English person put there. He's from, and also he spoke fluent Welsh. But he was a member of the Marcher elite in South Wales, so he would have likely known some English, especially with dealing with the royal court and administration. For legal and official matters, he would have probably encountered Latin and Anglo-Norman French, which was still used during the law. But in his daily life in Glamorgan, Welsh was the dominant spoken language, so he would have spoken it. And I was looking at what was his identity. Was he Welsh, or how did he consider himself?
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Was he I believe I'm a Welshman doing the best for Wales, or was it I'll get in with the English while Normans?
So what I read and what I could find online, so the fact he's called David ap Mathews, that's the traditional Welsh patronymic system. So ap meaning son of, so that implies he's a Welsh, but he's got long standing Welsh roots. He was part of a long established Welsh gentry family in Glamorgan rather than a Norman Marcher dynasty. So before the Normans came, his family was still here. His social networks, holdings, and military following were all rooted in South Wales. So before that, it's not like they've been brought over from France. But it's kind of important to remind people the identity of Wales in the 1400s wasn't a national in the modern sense. He would have probably thought of himself Welsh by culture and language, but a subject of the English crown and a martial lord serving the Yorkist king. So that's kind of three forms of identity, which you could most likely say.
Maybe even a boy from Morgannwg, as opposed to anything else to do with Wales as a whole.
Yeah, because we've talked about this before. No one really saw themselves as Welsh at the time in the same way that we would. You'd see it more closer to where you're from, like Morgannwg or Deheubarth. But in other words, he could be fully Welsh culturally while still politically loyal to an English monarchy. Yeah. So, and that wasn't unusual.
There was tons of people like that.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Sort of aligned with the crown, but still culturally Welsh.
Llywelyn Ein Llyw Olaf up until Glyndŵr. That gap in the middle would be similar, and then afterwards up until Henry. Then there's a Welsh king sat on the English throne not too long after this. And then one interesting detail, his adoption of the surname Mathew instead of the traditional Ap Matthew reflects a broader shift happening in Wales during the 15th century, where Welsh gentry increasingly adopt fixed surnames in the English style, especially when dealing with royal legislation. But culturally, linguistically, and socially, Sir David Mathew would be very Welsh. He lived in a very Welsh world.
Yeah.
So that's the story of Sir Mathew, who me and you have never heard of, and he's literally from here.
Definitely not, man. That was really good. I love a proper knight. It sounds very Sir Duncan the Tall, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, he was a bit of a Sir Dunk, isn't he? I'm Sir Dunk, you're
Sir
egg.
Dunk.
You're my little egg.
Shave my head, I would be a bit of an egg. Yeah. This, we'll talk about that maybe on the next episode because we haven't discussed.
No, we haven't, have we? We loved it.
We haven't discussed that.
If you got
anyway, that was really good, mate.
Thank you, mate. If you got this far, please could you drop a review, drop a 5-star on the page on Spotify or wherever you're listening. If you could follow us on Insta, because we're just at 3,999 followers. I really want to get to
just
4.
one more, lads. One more.
Yeah, and I think that's everything. We love you. Bye.
Cheers, lot. Ta-ra, ta-ra, ta-ra.